Preface of 8 Pillars of Prosperity. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andrea Fiore. 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. Preface. It is popularly supposed that a greater prosperity for individuals or nations can only come through political and social reconstruction. This cannot be true apart from the practice of the moral virtues in the individuals that comprise a nation. Better laws and social conditions will always follow a higher realization of morality among the individuals of a community, but no legal enactment can give prosperity to, nay, it cannot prevent the ruin of, a man or a nation that has become lax and decadent in the pursuit and practice of virtue. The moral virtues are the foundation and support of prosperity, as they are the soul of greatness. They endure forever, and all the works of a man which endure are built upon them. Without them there is neither strength, stability, nor substantial reality, but only ephemeral dreams. To find moral principles is to have found prosperity, greatness, truth, and is therefore to be strong, valiant, joyful, and free. James Allen. End of preface. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 1 of 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 1. 8 Pillars. Prosperity rests upon a moral foundation. It is popularly supposed to rest upon an immoral foundation, that is, upon trickery, sharp practice, deception, and greed. One commonly hears even an otherwise intelligent man declare that no man can be successful in business unless he is dishonest, thus regarding business prosperity, a good thing, as the effect of dishonesty, a bad thing. Such a statement is superficial and thoughtless, and reveals a total lack of knowledge of moral causation, as well as a very limited grasp of the facts of life. It is as though one should sow henbane and reap spinach, or erect a brick house on a quagmire, things impossible in the natural order of causation, and therefore not to be attempted. The spiritual or moral order of causation is not different in principle, but only in nature. The same law obtains in things unseen, in thoughts and deeds, as in things seen, in natural phenomena. Man sees the processes in natural objects, and acts in accordance with them, but not seeing the spiritual processes, he imagines that they do not obtain, and so he does not act in harmony with them. Yet these spiritual processes are just as simple and just as sure as the natural processes. They are indeed the same natural modes manifesting in the world of mind. All the parables and a large number of the sayings of the great teachers are designed to illustrate this fact. The natural world is the mental world made visible. The seen is the mirror of the unseen. The upper half of a circle is in no way different from the lower half, but its sphericity is reversed. The material and the mental are not two detached arcs in the universe. They are the two halves of a complete circle. The natural and the spiritual are not at eternal enmity, but in the true order of the universe are eternally at one. It is in the unnatural, in the abuse of function and faculty, where division arises, and where man is wrestled back, with repeated sufferings, from the perfect circle from which he has tried to depart. Every process in matter is also a process in mind. Every natural law has its spiritual counterpart. Take any natural object, and you will find its fundamental processes in the mental sphere if you rightly search. Consider, for instance, the germination of a seed and its growth into a plant, with the final development of a flower, and then back to seed again. This also is a mental process. Thoughts are seeds which, falling in the soil of the mind, germinate and develop until they reach the completed stage, blossoming into deeds good or bad, brilliant or stupid, according to their nature, and ending as seeds of thought to be again sown in other minds. A teacher is a sower of seed, a spiritual agriculturist, while he who teaches himself is the wise farmer of his own mental plot. The growth of a thought is as the growth of a plant. The seed must be sown seasonably, and time is required for its full development into the plant of knowledge and the flower of wisdom. While writing this I pause, and turn to look through my study window, and there, 100 yards away, is a tall tree, in the top of which some enterprising rook from a rookery close by has, for the first time, built its nest. A strong northeast wind is blowing, so that the top of the tree is swayed violently to and fro by the onset of the blast, yet there is no danger to that frail thing of sticks and hair, and the mother bird, sitting upon her eggs, has no fear of the storm. Why is this? It is because the bird has instinctively built her nest in harmony with principles which ensure the maximum strength and security. First, a fork is chosen as the foundation for the nest, and not a space between two separate branches, so that, however great may be the swaying of the top tree, the position of the nest is not altered, nor its structure disturbed. Then the nest is built on a circular plan, so as to offer the greatest resistance to any external pressure, as well as to obtain more perfect compactness within, in accordance with its purpose, and so, however the tempest may rage, the birds rest in comfort and security. This is a very simple and familiar object, and yet, in the strict obedience of its structure to mathematical law, it becomes to the wise a parable of enlightenment, teaching them that only by ordering one's deeds in accordance with fixed principles is perfect surety, perfect security, and perfect peace obtained amid the uncertainty of events and the turbulent tempests of life. A house or a temple built by a man is a much more complicated structure than a bird's nest, yet it is erected in accordance with those mathematical principles which are everywhere evidenced in nature. And here is seen how man, in material things, obeys universal principles. He never attempts to put up a building in defiance of geometrical proportions, for he knows that such a building would be unsafe, and that the first storm would, in all probability, level it to the ground, if indeed it did not fall about his ears during the process of erection. Man in his material building scrupulously obeys the fixed principles of circle, square, and angle, and aided by rule, plumb line, and compasses, he raises a structure which will resist the fiercest storms, and affords him a secure shelter and safe protection. All this is very simple, the reader may say. Yes, it is simple, because it is true and perfect, so true that it cannot admit the smallest compromise, and so perfect that no man can improve upon it. Man, through long experience, has learned these principles of the material world, and sees the wisdom of obeying them, and I have thus referred to them in order to lead up to a consideration of those fixed principles in the mental or spiritual world which are just as simple and just as eternally true and perfect, yet are at present so little understood by man as he daily violates them, because he is ignorant of their nature and unconscious of the harm he is all the time inflicting upon himself. In mind as matter, in thoughts as things, in deeds as natural processes, there is a fixed foundation of law, which, if consciously or ignorantly ignored, leads to disaster and defeat. It is indeed the ignorant violation of this law which is the cause of the world's pain and sorrow. In matter, this law is presented as mathematical. In mind, it is perceived as moral. But the mathematical and the moral are not separate and opposed. They are but two aspects of a united whole. The fixed principles of mathematics, to which all matter is subject, are the body of which the spirit is ethical, while the eternal principles of morality are mathematical truisms operating in the universe of mind. It is as impossible to live successfully apart from moral principles as to build successfully while ignoring mathematical principles. Characters, like houses, only stand firmly when built on a foundation of moral law, and they are built up slowly and laboriously, deed by deed, for in the building of character the bricks are deeds. Business and all human enterprises are not exempt from the external order, but can only stand securely by the observance of fixed laws. Prosperity, to be stable and enduring, must rest on a solid foundation of moral principle, and be supported by the adamantine pillars of sterling character and moral worth. In the attempt to run a business in defiance of moral principles, disaster of one kind or another is inevitable. The permanently prosperous men in any community are not its tricksters and deceivers, but its reliable and upright men. The Quakers are acknowledged to be the most upright men in the British community, and although their numbers are small, they are the most prosperous. The Jains in India are similar both in numbers and sterling worth, and they are the most prosperous people in India. Men speak of building up a business, and indeed a business is as much a building as is a brick house or a stone church, albeit the process of building is a mental one. Prosperity, like a house, is a roof over a man's head, affording him protection and comfort. A roof presupposes a support, and a support necessitates a foundation. The roof of prosperity, then, is supported by the following 8 pillars, which are cemented in a foundation of moral consistency. 1. Energy. 2. Economy. 3. Integrity. 4. System. 5. Sympathy. 6. Sincerity. 7. Impartiality. 8. Self-reliance. A business built up on the faultless practice of all these principles would be so firm and enduring as to be invincible. Nothing could injure it, nothing could undermine its prosperity, nothing could interrupt its success or bring it to the ground, but that success would be assured with incessant increase so long as the principles were adhered to. On the other hand, where these principles were all absent, there could be no success of any kind. There could not even be a business at all, for there would be nothing to produce the adherence of one part with another. But there would be that lack of life, that absence of fiber and consistency, which animates and gives body and form to anything whatsoever. Picture a man with all these principles absent from his mind, his daily life, and even if your knowledge of these principles is but slight and imperfect, you could not think of such a man as doing any successful work. You could picture him as leading the confused life of a shiftless tramp, but to imagine him as the head of a business, as the center of an organization, or as a responsible and controlling agent in any department of life, this you could not do, because you realize its impossibility. The fact that no one of moderate morality and intelligence can think of such a man as commanding any success should, to all those who have not yet grasped the import of these principles, and therefore declare that morality is not a factor, but rather a hindrance in prosperity, be a sound proof to them that their conclusion is totally wrong, for if it was right, then the greater the lack of these moral principles, the greater would be the success. These 8 principles, then, in greater or lesser degree, are the causative factors in all success of whatsoever kind. Underneath all prosperity they are the strong supports, and howsoever appearances may be against such a conclusion, a measure of them informs and sustains every effort which is crowned with that excellence which men name success. It is true that comparatively few successful men practice, in their entirety and perfection, all these 8 principles, but there are those who do, and they are the leaders, teachers, and guides of men, the supports of human society, and the strong pioneers of human evolution. But while few achieve that moral perfection which ensures the acme of success, all lesser successes come from the partial observance of these principles, which are so powerful in the production of good results that even perfection in any 2 or 3 of them alone is sufficient to ensure an ordinary degree of prosperity, and maintain a measure of local influence, at least for a time, while the same perfection in 2 or 3, with partial excellence in all or nearly all the others, will render permanent that limited success and influence which will necessarily grow and extend in exact ratio with a more intimate knowledge and practice of those principles which at present are only partially incorporated in the character. The boundary lines of a man's morality mark the limits of his success. So true is this that to know a man's moral status would be to mathematically gauge, his ultimate success or failure. The temple of prosperity only stands in so far as it is supported by its moral pillars, and as they are weakened, it becomes insecure in so far as they are withdrawn. It crumbles away and totters to ruin. Ultimate failure and defeat are inevitable where moral principles are ignored or defied, inevitable in the nature of things as cause and effect. As a stone thrown upward returns to the earth, so every deed, good or bad, returns upon him that set it forth. Every unmoral or immoral act frustrates the end at which it aims, and every such succeeding act puts it further and further away as an achieved realization. On the other hand, every moral act is another solid brick in the temple of prosperity, another round of strength and sculptured beauty in the pillars which support it. Individuals, families, nations grow and prosper in harmony with their growth in moral strength and knowledge. They fall and fail in accordance with their moral decadence. Mentally, as physically, only that which has form and solidity can stand and endure. The unmoral is nothingness, and from it nothing can be formed. It is the negation of substance. The immoral is destruction. It is the negation of form. It is a process of spiritual denudation. While it undermines and disintegrates, it leaves the scattered material ready for the wise builder to put it into form again, and the wise builder is morality. The moral substance, form, and building power in one. Morality always builds up and preserves, for that is its nature, being the opposite of immorality, which always breaks down and destroys. Morality is the master builder everywhere, whether in individuals or nations. Morality is invincible, and he who stands upon it to the end stands upon an impregnable rock, so that his defeat is impossible, his triumph is certain. He will be tried, and that to the uttermost, for without fighting there can be no victory, and so only can his moral powers be perfected, and it is in the nature of fixed principles, as of everything finely and perfectly wrought, to have their strength tested and proved. The steel bars, which are to perform the strongest and best uses in the world, must be subjected to a severe strain by the ironmaster as a test of their texture and efficiency before they are sent from his foundry. The brickmaker throws aside the bricks which have given way under the severe heat. So he who is to be greatly and permanently successful will pass through the strain of adverse circumstances and the fire of temptation with his moral nature not merely undermined, but strengthened and beautified. He will be like a bar of well-wrought steel, fit for the highest use, and the universe will see, as the ironmaster his finely wrought steel, that the use does not escape him. Immorality is assailable at every point, and he who tries to stand upon it sinks into the morass of dissolution. Even while his efforts seem to stand, they are crumbling away. The climax of failure is inevitable. While the immoral man is chuckling over his ill-gotten gains, there is already a hole in his pocket through which his gold is falling. While he who begins with morality, yet deserts it for gain in the hour of trial, is like the brick which breaks on the first application of heat, he is not fit for use, and the universe casts him aside, yet not finally, for he is a being and not a brick, and he can live and learn, can repent and be restored. Moral force is the life of all successes, and the sustaining element in all prosperity. But there are various kinds of successes, and it is frequently necessary that a man should fail in one direction that he may reach up to a greater and more far-reaching success. If, for instance, a literary, artistic, or spiritual genius should begin by trying to make money, it may be, and often is, to his advantage and the betterment of his genius that he should fail therein, so that he may achieve that more sublime success wherein lies his real power. Many a millionaire would doubtless be willing to barter his millions for the literary success of a Shakespeare or the spiritual success of a Buddha, and would thereby consider that he had made a good bargain. Exceptional spiritual success is rarely accompanied with riches, yet financial success cannot in any way compare with it in greatness and grandeur. But I am not, in this book, dealing with the success of the saint or spiritual genius, but with that success which concerns the welfare, well-being, and happiness of the broadly average man and woman, in a word, with the prosperity which, while being more or less connected with money, being present and temporal, yet is not confined thereto, but extends to and embraces all human activities, and which particularly relates to that harmony of the individual with his circumstances which produces that satisfaction called happiness and that comfort known as prosperity. To the achievement of this end, so desirable to the mass of mankind, let us now see how the 8 principles operate, how the roof of prosperity is raised and made secure upon the pillars by which it is supported. End of Chapter 1. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 2 of 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 2. First Pillar. Energy. Energy is the working power in all achievement. Inert coal converts it into fire, and water transmutes it into steam. It vivifies and intensifies the commonest talent until it approaches to genius, and when it touches the mind of the dullard, it turns into a living fire that which before was sleeping in inertia. Energy is a moral virtue, its opposing vice being laziness. As a virtue, it can be cultivated, and the lazy man can become energetic by forcibly arousing himself to exertion. Compared with the energetic man, the lazy man is half alive. Even while the latter is talking about the difficulty of doing a thing, the former is doing it. The active man has done a considerable amount of work before the lazy man has roused himself from sleep. While the lazy man is waiting for an opportunity, the active man has gone out, and met, and utilized half a dozen opportunities. He does things while the other is rubbing his eyes. Energy is one of the primary forces. Without it nothing can be accomplished. It is the basic element in all forms of action. The entire universe is a manifestation of tireless, though inscrutable, energy. Energy is, indeed, life, and without it there would be no universe, no life. When a man has ceased to act, when the body lies inert, and all the functions have ceased to act, then we say he is dead, and in so far as a man fails to act, he is so far dead. Man, physically and mentally, is framed for action, and not for swinish ease. Every muscle of the body, being a lever for exertion, is a rebuke to the lazy man. Every bone and nerve is fashioned for resistance. Every function and faculty is there for a legitimate use. All things have their end in action. All things are perfected in use. This being so, there is no prosperity for the lazy man, no happiness, no refuge and no rest. For him there is not even the ease which he covets, for he at last becomes a homeless outcast, a troubled, harried, despised man, so that the proverb wisely puts it, "The lazy man does the hardest work." In that avoiding the systematic labor of skill, he brings upon himself the hardest lot. Yet energy misapplied is better than no energy at all. This is powerfully put by St. John in the words, "I would have you either hot or cold. If you are lukewarm, I will spew you out of my mouth." The extremes of heat and cold here symbolize the transforming agency of energy, in its good and bad aspects. The lukewarm stage is colorless, lifeless, useless. It can scarcely be said to have either virtue or vice, and is merely barren, empty, fruitless. The man who applies his abounding energy to bad ends has, at the very power with which he strives to acquire his selfish ends, will bring upon him such difficulties, pains, and sorrows that will compel him to learn by experience, and so at last to refashion his base of action. At the right moment he will turn round and cut new and proper channels for the outflow of his power, and he will then be just as strong and good as he was formerly in evil. The truth is beautifully crystallized in the old proverb, "The greater the sinner, the greater the saint." Energy is power, and without it there will be no accomplishment. There will not even be virtue, for virtue does not consist of not doing evil, but also, primarily, of doing good. There are those who try, yet fail through insufficient energy. Their efforts are too feeble to produce positive results. Such are not vicious, and because they never do any deliberate harm, are usually spoken of as good men that fail. But to lack the initiative to do harm is not to be good, it is only to be weak and powerless. He who is truly a good man, having the power to do evil, yet chooses to direct his energies in ways that are good. Without a considerable degree of energy, therefore, there will be no moral power. What good there is will be latent and sleeping. There will be no going forth of good, just as there can be no mechanical motion without the motive power. Energy is the informing power in all doing in every department of life, whether it be along material or spiritual lines. The call to action, which comes not only from the soldier, but from the lips or pen of every teacher in every grade of thought, is a call to men to rouse their sleeping energy, and to do vigorously the task in hand. Even the men of contemplation and meditation never cease to rouse their disciples to exertion in meditative thought. Energy is alike needed in all spheres of life, and not only are the rules of the soldier, the engineer, and the merchant rules of action, but nearly all precepts of the saviors, sages, and saints are precepts of doing. The advice of one of the great teachers to his disciples, "Keep wide awake," tersely expresses the necessity for tireless energy if one's purpose is to be accomplished, and is equally good advice to the salesman as to the saint. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and liberty is the reaching of one's fixed end. It was the same teacher that said, "If anything is to be done, let a man do it at once, let him attack it vigorously." The wisdom of this advice is seen when it is remembered that action is creative, that increase and development follow upon legitimate use. To get more energy, we must use to the full that which we already possess. Only to him that is given, only to him that puts his hand vigorously to some task, does power and freedom come. But energy, to be productive, must not only be directed towards good ends, it must be carefully controlled and conserved. The conservation of energy is a modern term expressive of that principle in nature by which no energy is wasted or lost, and the man whose energies are to be fruitful in results must work intelligently upon this principle. Noise and hurry are so much energy running to waste. More haste, less speed. The maximum of noise usually accompanies the minimum of accomplishment. With much talk there is little doing. Working steam is not heard. It is the escaping steam which makes a great noise. It is the concentrated powder which drives the bullet to its mark. In so far as a man intensifies his energies by conserving them and concentrating them upon the accomplishment of his purpose, just so far does he gain quietness and silence, in repose and calmness. It is a great delusion that noise means power. There is no great baby than the blustering boaster. He is but an infant mentally, and having no strength to do anything, and no work to show, he tries to make up for it by loudly proclaiming what he has done, or could do. Still waters run deep, and the great universal forces are inaudible. Where calmness is, there is the greatest power. Calmness is the sure indication of a strong, well-trained, patiently disciplined mind. The calm man knows his business, be sure of it. His words are few, but they tell. His schemes are well planned, and they work true, like a well-balanced machine. He sees a long way ahead, and makes straight for his object. The enemy, difficulty, he converts into a friend, and makes profitable use of him, for he has studied well how to agree with his adversary while he is in the way with him. Like a wise general, he has anticipated all emergencies. Indeed, he is the man who is prepared beforehand. In his meditations, in the counsels of his judgment, he has conferred with causes, and has caught the bent of all contingencies. He is never taken by surprise, is never in a hurry, is safe in the keeping of his own steadfastness, and is sure of his ground. You may think you have got him, only to find, the next moment, that you have tripped in your haste, and that he has got you, or rather that you, wanting calmness, have hurried yourself into the dilemma which you have prepared for him. Your impulse cannot do battle with his deliberation, but is foiled by the first attack. Your uncurbed energy cannot turn aside the wisely directed steam of his concentrated power. He is armed at all points. By a mental jiu-jitsu acquired through self-discipline, he meets opposition in such a way that it destroys itself. Upbraid him with angry words, and the reproof hidden in his gentle reply searches to the very heart of your folly, and the fire of your anger sinks into the ashes of remorse. Approach him with a vulgar familiarity, and his look at once will fill you with shame. and brings you back to your senses. As he is prepared for all events, so is he ready for all men, though no men are ready for him. All weaknesses are betrayed in his presence, and he commands by an inherent force which calmness has rendered habitual and unconscious. Calmness, as distinguished from the dead placidity of languor, is the acme of concentrated energy. There is a focused mentality behind it. In agitation and excitement the mentality is dispersed. It is irresponsible, and is without force or weight. The fussy, peevish, irritable man has no influence. He repels and not attracts. He wonders why his easy-going neighbor succeeds and is sought after, while he, who is always hurrying, worrying, and troubling the miscalls, is striving, falls, and is avoided. His neighbor, being a calmer man, is not more easy-going, but more deliberate, gets through more work, does it more skillfully, and is more self-possessed and manly. This is the reason of his success and influence. His energy is controlled and used, while the other man's energy is dispersed and abused. Energy, then, is the first pillar in the temple of prosperity, and without it, as the first and most essential equipment, there can be no prosperity. No energy means no capacity. There is no manly self-respect and independence. Amongst the unemployed, there will be found many who are unemployable through sheer lack of this first essential work of energy. The man that stands many hours a day at a street corner with his hands in his pockets and a pipe in his mouth, waiting for someone to treat him to a glass of beer, is little likely to find employment, or to accept it should it come to him. Physically flabby and mentally inert, he is every day becoming more some, is making himself more unfit to work, and therefore unfit to live. The energetic man may pass through temporary periods of unemployment and suffering, but it is impossible for him to become one of the permanently unemployed. He will either find work or make it, for inertia is painful to him, and work is a delight, and he who delights in work will not long remain unemployed. The lazy man does not wish to be employed. He is in his element while doing nothing. His chief study is how to avoid exertion. To vegetate in semi-torpor is his idea of happiness. He is unfit and unemployable. Even the extreme socialist, who places all unemployment at the door of the rich, would discharge a lazy, neglectful, and unprofitable servant, and so add one more to the arm of the unemployed, for laziness is one of the lowest vices repulsive to all active, right-minded men. But energy is a composite power. It does not stand alone. Involved in it are qualities which go into the making of vigorous character and the production of prosperity. Mainly, these qualities are contained in the four following characteristics: 1. Promptitude. 2. Vigilance. 3. Industry. 4. Earnestness. The pillar of energy is therefore a concrete mass, composed of these four tenacious elements. They are thorough, enduring, and are calculated to withstand the wildest weather of adversity. They are all make for life, power, capacity, and progress. Promptitude is valuable possession. It begets reliability. People who are alert, prompt, and punctual are relied upon. They can be trusted to do their duty, and to do it vigorously and well. Masters who are prompt are a tonic to their employees, and a whip to those who are inclined to shirk. They are a means of wholesome discipline to those who would not otherwise discipline themselves. Thus, while aiding their own usefulness and success, they contribute to the usefulness and success of others. The perfunctory worker, who is ever procrastinating and is always behind time, becomes a nuisance, if not to himself, to others, and his services come to be regarded as of little economic value. Deliberation and dispatch, handmaids of promptitude, are valuable aids in the achievement of prosperity. In ordinary business channels, alacrity is a saving power, and promptness spells profit. It is doubtful whether a confirmed procrastinator ever succeeded in business. I have not yet met one such, though I have known many who have failed. Vigilance is the guard of all the faculties and powers of the mind. It is the detective that prevents the entrance of any violent and destructive element. It is the close companion and protector of all success, liberty, and wisdom. Without this watchful attitude of mind, a man is a fool, and there is no prosperity for a fool. The fool allows his mind to be ransacked and robbed of its gravity, serenity, and judgment by mean thoughts and violent passions as they come along to molest him. He is ever on his guard, but leaves open the doors of his mind to every nefarious intruder. He is so weak and unsteady as to be swept off his balance by every gust of impulse that overtakes him. He is an example to others of what they should not be. He is always a failure, for the fool is an offense to all men, and there is no society that can receive him with respect. As wisdom is the acme of strength, so folly is the other extreme of weakness. The lack of vigilance is shown in thoughtlessness and in general looseness in the common details of life. Thoughtlessness is built another name for folly. It lies at the root of a great deal of failure and misery. No one who aims at any kind of usefulness and prosperity, for usefulness in the body politic and prosperity to oneself cannot be served, can afford to be asleep with regard to his actions and the effect of those actions on others and reactively on himself. He must, at the outset of his career, wake up to a sense of his personal responsibility. He must know that wherever he is, in the home, the counting-house, the pulpit, the store, in the schoolroom or behind the counter, in company or alone, at work or at play, his conduct will materially affect his career for good or bad, for there is a subtle influence in behavior which leaves its impression on every man, woman, and child that it touches, and that impress is the determining factor in the attitude of persons toward one another. It is for that reason that the cultivation of good manners plays such an important part in all coherent society. If you carry about with you a disturbing or disagreeable mental defect, it needs not to be named and known to work its poison upon your affairs. Its corrosive influence will eat into all of your efforts and disfigure your happiness and prosperity, as powerful acid eats into and disfigures the finest steel. On the other hand, if you carry about an assuring and harmonious mental excellence, those about you will understand it and be influenced by it. They will be drawn towards you in good will, often without knowing why, and that good quality will be the most powerful sport in all your affairs, bringing you friends and opportunities, and greatly aiding in the success of all your enterprises. It will even right your minor incapacities, covering a multitude of faults. Thus we receive at the hands of the world according to the measure of our giving. For bad, bad; for good, good; for defective conduct, indifferent influence and imperfect success; for superior conduct, lasting power and consummate achievement. We act and the world responds. When the foolish man fails he blames others and sees no error in himself, but the wise man watches and corrects himself, and so is assured of success. The man whose mind is vigilant and alert has thereby a valuable equipment in the achievement of his aims, and if he be fully alive and wide awake on all occasions, to all opportunities, and against all marring defects of character, what event, what circumstance, What enemy shall overtake him and find him unprepared? What shall prevent him from achieving the legitimate end at which he aims? Industry brings cheerfulness and plenty. Vigorously industrious people are the happiest members of the community. They are not always the richest, if by riches is meant a superfluity of money, but they are always the most light-hearted and joyful, and the most satisfied with what they do have, and therefore are richer, if by richer we mean more abundantly blessed. Active people have no time for moping and brooding, or for dwelling selfishly upon their ailments and troubles. Things most used are kept the brightest, and people most employed best retain their brightness and buoyancy of spirit. Things unused tarnish quickest, and the time-killer is attacked with ennui and morbid fancies. To talk of having to kill time is almost like a confession of imbecility. For who, in the short life at his disposal, and in a world so flooded with resources of knowledge, with sound heads and good hearts, can fill up every moment of every day usefully and happily? And if they refer to time at all, it is to the effect that it is all too short to enable them to do what they would like to do. Industry, too, promoted health and well-being. The active man goes to bed tired every night. His rest is sound and sweet, and he wakes up early in the morning, fresh and strong for another day's delightful toil. His appetite and digestion are good. He has an excellent sauce in recreation, and a good tonic in toil. What companionship can such a man have with moping and melancholy? Such morbid spirits hang around those who do little and dine excessively. People who make themselves useful to the community receive back from the community their full share of health, happiness, and prosperity. They brighten the daily task and keep the world moving. They are the gold of the nation and the salt of the earth. Earnestness, said a great teacher, is the path of immortality. They who are in earnest do not die. They who are not in earnest are as if dead already. Earnestness is the dedication of the entire mind to its task. We live only in what we do. Earnest people are dissatisfied with anything short of the highest excellence in whatever they do, and they always reach that excellence. There are so many that are careless and half-hearted, so satisfied with a poor performance, that the earnest ones shine apart, as it were, in their excellence. There are always plenty of vacancies in the ranks of usefulness and service for earnest people. There never was and never will be a deeply earnest man or woman who did not fill successfully some suitable sphere. Such people are scrupulous, conscientious, and painstaking, and cannot rest in ease until the very best is done, and the whole world is always on the lookout to reward the best. It stands ready to pay the full price, whether in fame, money, friends, influence, happiness, scope, or life, for that which is of surpassing excellence, whether it be in things material, intellectual, or spiritual. Whatever you are, whether shopkeeper or saintly teacher, you can safely give the very best to the world without any doubt or misgiving. If the indelible impress of your earnestness be on your goods in the one case, or on your words in the other, your business will flourish, or your precepts will live. Earnest people make rapid progress both in their work and their character. It is thus that they live, and do not die, for stagnation only is death, and where there is incessant progress and ever-ascending excellence, stagnation and health are swallowed up in activity and life. Thus is the making and masonry of the first pillar explained. He who builds it well and sets it firm and straight will have a powerful and enduring support in the business of his life. End of Chapter 2. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 3 of 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 3. Second Pillar. Economy. It is said of nature that she knows no vacuum. She also knows no waste. In the divine economy, the nature of everything is conserved and turned to good account. Even excreta are chemically transmitted and utilized in the building up of new forms. Nature destroys every foulness, not by annihilation, but by transmutation, by sweetening and purifying it, and making it serve the ends of things beautiful, useful, and good. That economy which, in nature is a universal principle, is in man a moral principle, and it is that quality by which he preserves his energies, and sustains his place as a working unit in the scheme of things. Financial economy is merely a fragment of this principle, or rather, it is a material symbol of that economy which is purely mental, and its transmutation spiritual. The financial economist exchanges coppers for silver, silver for gold, gold for notes, and the notes he converts into the figures of a bank account. By these conversions of money into more readily transmissible forms, he is the gainer in the financial management of his affairs. The spiritual economist transmutes passions into intelligence, intelligence into principles, principles into wisdom, and wisdom is manifested in actions, which are few but powerful in effect. By all these transmutations he is the gainer in character and in the management of his life. True economy is the middle way in all things, whether material or mental, between waste and undue retention. That which is wasted, whether money or mental energy, is rendered powerless. That which is selfishly retained and hoarded up is equally powerless. To secure power, whether of capital or mentality, there must be concentration, but concentration must be followed by legitimate use. The gathering up of money or energy is only a means, the end is use, and it is use only that produces power. An all-round economy consists in finding the middle way in the following 7 things: money, food, clothing, recreation, rest, time, and energy. Money is the symbol of exchange, and represents purchasing power. He who is anxious to acquire financial wealth, as well as he who wishes to avoid debt, must study how to apportion his expenditure in accordance with his income, so as to leave a margin of ever-increasing working capital, or to have a little store ready in hand for any emergency. Money spent in thoughtless expenditure, in worthless pleasures or harmful luxuries, is money wasted and power destroyed, for although a limited and subordinate power, the means and capacity for legitimate and virtuous purchase is, nevertheless, a power, and one that enters largely into the details of our everyday life. The spendthrift can never become rich, but if he begins with riches, must soon become poor. The miser, with all his stored away gold, cannot be said to be rich, for he is in want, and his gold, lying idle, is deprived of its power of purchase. The thrifty and prudent are on the way to riches, for while they spend wisely they save carefully, and gradually enlarge their spheres as their growing means allow. The poor man who is to become rich must begin at the bottom, and must not wish, nor try to appear affluent, by attempting something far beyond his means. There is always plenty of room and scope at the bottom, and it is a safe place from which to begin, as there is nothing below, and everything above. Many a young business man comes at once to grief by swagger and display, which he foolishly imagines are necessary to success, but which, deceiving no one but himself, lead quickly to ruin. A modest and true beginning in any sphere will better ensure success than an exaggerated advertisement of one's standing and importance. The smaller the capital, the smaller should be the sphere of operations. Capital and scope are hand and glove, and they should fit. Concentrate your capital within the circle of its working power, and however circumscribed that circle may be, it will continue to widen and extend as the gathering momentum of power presses for expression. Above all, take care always to avoid the two extremes of parsimony and prodigality. Food represents life, vitality, and both physical and mental strength. There is a middle way in eating and drinking as in all else. The man who is to achieve prosperity must be well nourished, but not overfed. The man that starves his body, whether through miserliness or asceticism, both forms of false economy, diminishes his mental energy, and renders his body too enfeebled to be the instrument for any strong achievement. Such a man courts sickly-mindedness, a condition conducive only to failure. The glutton, however, destroys himself by excess. His bestialized body becomes a stored-up reservoir of poisons, which attract disease and corruption, while his mind becomes more and more brutalized and confused, and therefore more incapable. Gluttony is one of the lowest and most animal vices, and is obnoxious to all who pursue a moderate course. The best workers and most successful men are they who are most moderate in eating and drinking. By taking enough nourishment, but not too much, they attain the maximum physical and mental fitness. Being thus well equipped by moderation, they are enabled to vigorously and joyfully fight the battle of life. Clothing is covering and protection for the body, though it is frequently wrested from this economic purpose and made a means of vain display. The two extremes to be avoided here are negligence and vanity. Custom cannot and need not be ignored, and cleanliness is all important. The ill-dressed, unkempt man or woman invites failure and loneliness. A man's dress should harmonize with his station in life, and should be of good quality, and be well made and appropriate. Clothing should not be cast aside while comparatively new, but should be well worn. If a man be poor, he will not lose in either self-respect or the respect of others by wearing threadbare clothing, if it be clean, and his whole body be clean and neat. But vanity, leading to excessive luxury in clothing, is a vice which should be studiously avoided by virtuous people. I know a lady who has 40 dresses in her wardrobe, also a man who had 20 walking sticks, about the same number of hats, and some dozen mackintoshes, while another had some 20 or 30 pairs of boots. Rich people who thus squander money on piles of superfluous clothing are courting poverty, for it is waste, and waste leads to want. The money so heedlessly spent could be better used, for suffering abounds, and charity is noble. An obtrusive display in clothing and jewelry bespeaks a vulgar and empty mind. Modest and cultured people are modest and becoming in their dress, and their spare money is wisely used in further enhancing their culture and virtue. Education and progress are of more importance to them than vain and needless apparel, and literature, art, and science are encouraged thereby. A true refinement is in the mind and behavior, and a mind adorned with virtue and intelligence cannot add to its attractiveness, though it may detract from it, by an ostentatious display of the body. Time spent in uselessly adorning the body could be more fruitfully employed. Simplicity in dress, as in other things, is the best. It touches the point of excellence in usefulness, comfort, and bodily grace, and bespeaks true taste and cultivated refinement. Recreation is one of the necessities of life. Every man and woman should have some definitive work as the main object of life, and to which a considerable amount of time should be devoted, and he should only turn from it at given and limited periods for recreation and rest. The object of recreation is greater buoyancy of both body and mind, with an increase of power in one's serious work. It is therefore a means, not an end, and this should ever be borne in mind, for to many some forms of recreation, innocent and good in themselves, become so fascinating that they are in danger of making themselves the end of life, and of thus abandoning duty for pleasure. To make of life a ceaseless round of games and pleasures, with no other object in life, is to turn living upside down, as it were, and it produces monotony and enervation. People who do it are the most unhappy of mortals, and suffer from languor, ennui, and peevishness. As sauce is an aid to digestion, and can lead only to misery when made the work of life. When a man has done his day's duty he can turn to his recreation with a free mind and a light heart, and both his work and his pleasure will be to him a source of happiness. It is true economy in this particular, neither to devote the whole of one's time to work nor to recreation, but to apportion to each its time and place, and so to fill out life with those changes which are necessary to a long life and a fruitful existence. All agreeable changes are recreation, and the mental worker will gain both in the quality and quantity of his work by laying it down at the time appointed for restful and refreshing recreation, while the physical worker will improve in every way by turning to some form of study as a hobby or means of education. As we do not spend all of our time in eating or sleeping or resting, neither should we spend it in exercise or pleasure, but should give recreation its proper place as a natural tonic in the economic scheme of our life. Rest is for the recuperation after toil. Every self-respecting human should do sufficient work every day to make his sleep restful and sweet, and his rising up fresh and bright. Enough sleep should be taken, but not too much. Overindulgence on the one hand, or deprivation on the other, are both harmful. It is an easy matter to find out how much sleep one requires. By going to bed early and getting up early, rising a little earlier every morning if one has been in the habit of spending long hours in bed, one can soon very accurately gauge and adjust the number of hours he or she requires for complete recuperation. It will be found as the sleeping hours are shortened that the sleep becomes more and more sound and sweet, and the waking up more and more alert and bright. People who are to prosper in their work must not give way to ignoble ease and overindulgence in sleep. Fruitful labor, and not ease, is the true end of life, and ease is only good in so far as it subserves the ends of work. Sloth and prosperity can never be companions, and can never even approach each other. The sluggard will never overtake success, but failure will speedily catch up with him and leave him defeated. Rest is to fit us for greater labor, and not to pamper us in indulgence. When the body vigor is restored, the end of rest is accomplished. A perfect balance between labor and rest contributes considerably to health, happiness, and prosperity. Time is that which we all possess in equal measure. The day is not lengthened for any man. We should therefore see to it that we do not squander its precious minutes in unprofitable waste. He who spends his time in self-indulgence and the pursuit of pleasure presently finds himself old, and nothing has been accomplished. He who fills full with useful pursuits the minutes as they come and go grows old in honor and wisdom, and prosperity abides with him. Money wasted can be restored, health wasted can be restored, but time wasted can never be restored. It is an old saying that time is money. It is, in the same way, health and strength and talent and genius and wisdom, in accordance with the manner in which it is used, and to properly use it, the minutes must be seized upon as they come, for once they pass they can never be recalled. The day should be divided into portions, and everything, work, leisure, meals, recreation, should be attended to in its proper time, and the time of preparation should not be overlooked or ignored. Whatever a man does, he will do it better and more successfully by utilizing some small portion of the day in preparing his mind for his work. The man who gets up early in order to think and plan, that he may weigh and consider and forecast, will always manifest greater skill and success in his particular pursuit than the man who lives in bed till the last moment, and only gets up just in time to begin breakfast. An hour spent in this way before breakfast will prove of the greatest value in making one's efforts fruitful. It is a means of calming and clarifying the mind, and of focusing one's energies so as to render them more powerful and effective. The best and most abiding success is that which is made before 8 o'clock in the morning. He who is at business at 6 o'clock will always, other conditions being equal, be a long way ahead of the man who is in bed at 8. The lie-a-bed heavily handicaps himself in the race of life. He gives his early rising competitor 2 or 3 hours start every day. How can he ever hope to win with such a self-imposed tax upon his time? At the end of a year that 2 or 3 hours start every day is shown in a success which is the synthesis of accumulated results. What, then, must be the difference between the efforts of these two men at the end of, say, 20 years? The lie-a-bed, too, after he gets up, is always in a hurry trying to regain lost time, which results in more loss of time, for hurry always defeats its own end. The early rise, who thus economizes his time, has no need to hurry, for he is always ahead of the hour, is always well up with his work. He can well afford to be calm and deliberate, and to do carefully and well whatever is in his hand, for his good habit shows itself at the end of the day in the form of a happy frame of mind, and in bigger results in the shape of work skillfully and successfully done. In the economizing of time, too, there will be many things which a man will have to eliminate from his life. Some of the things and pursuits which he loves and desires to retain will have to be sacrificed to the main purpose of his life. The studied elimination of non-essentials from one's daily life is a vital factor in all great achievement. All great men are adepts in this branch of economy, and it plays an important role in the making of their greatness. It is a form of economy which also enters into the mind, the actions, and the speech, eliminating from them all that is superfluous, and that impedes, and does not subserve, the end aimed at. Foolish and unsuccessful people talk carelessly and aimlessly, act carelessly and aimlessly, and allow everything that comes along, good, bad, and indifferent, to lodge in their mind. The mind of the true economist is a sieve which lets everything fall through except that which is of use to him in the business of his life. He also employs only necessary words, and does only necessary actions, thus vastly minimizing friction and waste of power. To go to bed at bedtime, to fill in every working minute with purposeful thought and effective action, this is the true economy of time. Energy is economized by the formation of good habits. All vices are a reckless expenditure of energy. Sufficient energy is thoughtlessly wasted in bad habits to enable men to accomplish the greatest success, if conserved and used in right directions. If economy be practiced in the 6 points already covered, much will be done in the conservation of one's energies, but a man must still go further, and carefully husband his vitality by the avoidance of all forms of physical self-indulgences and impurities, but also all those mental vices, such as hurry, worry, excitement, despondency, anger, complaining, and envy, which deplete the mind and render it unfit for any important work or admirable achievement. These are common forms of mental dissipation which a man of character should study how to avoid and overcome. The energy wasted in frequent fits of bad temper would, if controlled and properly directed, give a man strength of mind, force of character, and much power to achieve. The angry man is a strong man made weak by the dissipation of his mental energy. He needs self-control to manifest his strength. The calm man is always superior in any department of life, and will always take precedence, both in his success and in the estimation of others. No man can afford to disperse his energies in fostering bad habits and bad tendencies of mind. Every vice, however apparently small, will tell against him in the battle of life. Every harmful self-indulgence will come back to him in the form of some trouble or weakness.
Every moment of riot or of pandering to his lower inclinations will make his progress more laborious, and will hold him back from scaling the high heaven of his wishes for achievement. On the other hand, he who economizes his energies, and bends them toward the main task of his life, will make rapid progress, and nothing will prevent him from reaching the golden city of success. It will be seen that economy is something far more profound and far more reaching than the mere saving of money. It touches every part of our nature in every phase of our life. The old saying, "Take care of the pence, and the pounds will take care of themselves," may be regarded as a parable, for the lower passions as native energy. It is the abuse of that energy that is bad, and if this personal energy be taken care of and stored up and transmuted, it reappears as a force of character. To waste this valuable energy in the pursuit of vice is like wasting the pence and so losing the pounds, but to take care of it for good uses is to store up the pence of passions, and so gain the golden pounds of good. Take care, therefore, of the lower energies, and the higher achievements will take care of themselves. The pillars of economy, when soundly built, will be found to be composed largely of these four qualities: 1. Moderation. 2. Efficiency. 3. Resourcefulness. 4. Originality. Moderation is the strong core of economy. It avoids extremes, finding the middle way in all things. It also consists in abstaining from the unnecessary and the harmful. There can be no such things as moderation in that which is evil, for that would be excess. A true moderation abstains from evil. It is not a moderate use of fire to put our hands into it, but to warm them by it at a safe distance. Evil is a fire that will burn a man if he touch it. It is a harmful luxury, and is best left severely alone. Smoking, snuff-taking, alcoholic drinking, gambling, and other such common vices, although they have dragged thousands down to ill health, misery, and failure, have never helped towards one's health, happiness, and success. The man who eschews them will always be head of the man that pursues them, their talents and opportunities being equal. Happy, healthy, and long-lived people are always moderate and abstemious in their habits. By moderation the life forces are preserved; by excess they are destroyed. Men also who carry moderation in their thoughts, allaying their passions and feelings, avoiding all unwholesome extremes in morbid sensations and sentiments, add knowledge and wisdom to happiness and health, and thereby attain to the highest felicity and power. The immoderate destroy themselves by their own folly. They weaken their energies, and stultify their capabilities. Instead of achieving an abiding success, reach only, at best, a fitful and precarious prosperity. Efficiency proceeds from the right conservation of one's forces and powers. All skill is the use of concentrated energy. Superior skill, as talent and genius, is a high degree of concentrated force. Men are always skillful in that which they love, because the mind is almost ceaselessly centered upon it. Skill is the result of that mental economy which transmutes thought into invention and action. There will be no prosperity without skill, and one's prosperity will be the measure of one's skill. By a process of natural selection, the insufficient fall into their right places, among the badly paid or unemployed, for who will employ a man who cannot, or will not, do his work properly? An employer may occasionally keep a man out of charity, but this will be exceptional, as places of business, offices, households, and all centers of organized activity are not charitable institutions, but industrial bodies which stand or fall on the fitness and efficiency of their individual members. Skill is gained by thoughtfulness and attention. Aimless and inattentive people are usually out of employment, to wit, the lounger at the street corner. They cannot do the simplest thing properly, because they will not rouse up the mind to thought and attention. Recently an acquaintance of mine employed a tramp to clean his windows, but the man had refrained from work and systematic thought for so long that he had become incapable of both, and could not even clean a window. Even when shown how to do it, he could not follow the simple instructions given. This is an instance, too, of the fact that the simplest thing requires a measure of skill in the doing. Efficiency largely determines a man's place among his fellows, and leads one on by steps to higher and higher positions as greater powers are developed. The good workman is skillful with his tools, while the good man is skillful with his thoughts. Wisdom is the highest form of skill, aptitude in incipient wisdom. There is one right way of doing everything, even the smallest, and 1,000 wrong ways. Skill consists in finding the one right way and adhering to it. The insufficient bungle confusedly about among the 1,000 wrong ways, and do not adopt the right way even when it is pointed out to them. They do this in some cases because they think, in their ignorance, that they know best, thereby placing themselves in a position where it becomes impossible to learn, even though it be only to learn how to clean a window or sweep a floor. Thoughtlessness and inefficiency are all too common. There is plenty of room in the world for thoughtful and efficient people. Employers of labor know how difficult it is to get the best workmanship. The good workman, whether with his tools or brain, whether with speech or thought, will always find a place for the exercise of his skill. Resourcefulness is the outcome of efficiency. It is an important element in prosperity, for the resourceful man is never confounded. He may have many falls, but he will always be equal to the occasion, and will be on his feet again immediately. Resourcefulness has its fundamental cause in the conservation of energy. It is energy transmuted. When a man cuts off certain mental or bodily vices which have been depleting him of his energy, what becomes of the energy so conserved? It is not lost or destroyed, for energy can never be lost or destroyed. It becomes productive energy. It reappears in the form of fruitful thought. The virtuous man is always more successful than the vicious man, because he is teeming with resources. His entire mentality is alive and vigorous, abounding with stored up energy. What the vicious man wastes in barren indulgence, the virtuous man uses in fruitful industry. A new life and a new world, abounding with all fascinating pursuits and pure delights, open up to a man who shuts himself off from the old world of animal vice, and his place will be assured by the resources which will well up within him. Barren seed perishes in the earth. There is no place for it in the fruitful economy of nature. Barren minds sink in the struggle of life. Human society makes for good, and there is no room in it for the emptiness engendered by vice. But the barren mind will not sink forever. When it wills, it can become fruitful and regain itself. By the very nature of existence, by the eternal law of progress, the vicious man must fall. But having fallen, he can rise again. He can turn from vice to virtue, and stand, self-respecting and secure, upon his own resources. The resourceful men invent, discover, initiate. They cannot fail, for they are in the stream of progress. They are full of new schemes, new methods, new hopes, and their life is so much fuller and richer thereby. They are men of supple minds. When a man fails to improve his business, his work, his methods, he falls out of the line of progress, and has begun to fail. His mind has become stiff and inert, like the body of an aged man, and so fails to keep pace with the rapidly moving ideas and plans of resourceful minds. A resourceful mind is like a river which never runs dry, and which affords refreshment, and supplies new vigor in times of drought. Men of resources are men of new ideas, and men of new ideas flourish where others fade and decay. Originality is resourcefulness ripened and perfected. Where there is originality there is genius, and men of genius are the lights of the world. Whatever work a man does, he should fall back upon his own resources in the doing of it. While learning from others, he should not slavishly imitate them, but should put himself into his work, and so make it new and original. Original men get the ear of the world. They may be neglected at first, but they are always ultimately accepted and become patterns for mankind. Once a man has acquired the knack of originality, he takes his place as a leader among men in his particular department of knowledge and skill. But originality cannot be forced. It can only be developed, and it is developed by proceeding from excellence to excellence, by ascending in the scale of skill, by the full and right use of one's mental powers. Let a man consecrate himself to his work. Let him, so consecrated, concentrate all his energies upon it, and the day will come when the world will hail him as one of its strong sons, and he too, like Balzac, who after many years of strenuous toil one day exclaimed, "I am about to become a genius. I am about to become a genius," will at least discover to his joy that he has joined the company of original minds, the gods who lead mankind into newer, higher, and more beneficent ways. The composition of the second pillar is thus revealed. Its building awaits the ready man who will skillfully apply his mental energies. End of chapter 3. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 4 of 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 4. Third Pillar. Integrity. There is no striking a cheap bargain with prosperity. It must be purchased, not only with intelligent labor, but with a moral force. As the bubble cannot endure, so the fraud cannot prosper. He makes a feverish spurt in the acquirement of money, and then collapses. Nothing is ever gained, nothing can ever be gained by fraud. It is but wrested for a time, to be again returned with heavy interest. But fraud is not confined to the unscrupulous swindler. All who are getting, or trying to get, money without giving an equivalent are practicing fraud, whether they know it or not. Men who are anxiously scheming how to get money without working for it are frauds, and mentally they are closely allied to the thief and the swindler, under whose influence they come, sooner or later, and who deprives them of their capital. What is a thief but a man who carries to its logical extreme or later, and who deprives them of their capital? What is a thief but a man who carries it to its logical extreme, the desire to possess, without giving a just return, that is, unlawfully? The man that courts prosperity must, in all his transactions, whether material or mental, study how to give a just return for that which he receives. This is the great fundamental principle in all sound commerce, while in spiritual things it becomes the doing to others that which we would have them do to us, and applied to the forces of the universe, it is scientifically stated in the formula, action and reaction are equal. Human life is reciprocal, not rapacious, and the man who regards all others as his legitimate prey will soon find himself stranded in the desert of ruin, far away from the path of prosperity. He is too far behind in the process of evolution to cope successfully with honest men. The fittest, the best, always survive, and he being the worst cannot therefore continue. His end, unless the change in time, is sure it is the goal, the filthy hovel, or the place of the deserted outcast. His efforts are destructive and not constructive, and he thereby destroys himself. It was Carlyle who, referring to Mohammed, being then universally regarded by Christians as an impostor, exclaimed, "An impostor found a religion. An impostor couldn't build a brick house. An impostor, a liar, a cheat, the man of dishonesty, cannot build, As he has neither tools nor material with which to build, he can no more build up a business, a character, a career, a success, than he can found a religion or build a brick house. He not only does not build, but all his energies are bent on undermining what others have built. But his being impossible, he undermines himself. Without integrity, energy and economy will at last fail, but aided by integrity, their strength will be greatly augmented. There is not an occasion in life in which the moral factor does not play an important part. Sterling integrity, wherever it is, stamps its hallmark on all transactions, and it does this because of its wonderful coherence and consistency and its invincible strength. For the man of integrity is in line with the fixed laws of things, not only with the fundamental principles on which human society rests, but with the laws which hold the vast universe together. Who shall set all these at naught? Who, then, shall undermine the man of unblemished integrity? He is like a strong tree whose roots are fed by perennial springs, and which no tempest can lay low. To be complete and strong, integrity must embrace the whole man, and extend to all the details of his life, and it must be so thorough and permanent as to withstand all temptations to swerve into compromise. To fail in one point is to fail in all, and to admit under stress a compromise with falsehood, howsoever necessary and insignificant it may appear, is to throw down the shield of integrity, and to stand exposed to the onslaughts of evil. The man who works as carefully and conscientiously when his employer is away as when his eye is upon him will not long remain in an inferior position. Such integrity and duty in performing the details of his work will quickly lead him into the fertile regions of prosperity. The shirker, on the other hand, he who does not scruple or neglect his work when his employer is not about, thereby robbing his employer of the time and labor for which he is paid, will quickly come to the barren reign of unemployment, and will look in vain for needful labor. There will come a time, too, to the man who is not deeply rooted in integrity, when it will seem necessary to his prospects and prosperity that he should tell a lie or do a dishonest thing. I say to the man who is not deeply rooted in this principle, for a man of fixed and enlightened integrity knows that lying and dishonesty can never under any circumstance be necessary, and therefore he neither needs to be tempted in this particular, nor can he possibly be tempted, but the one so tempted must be able to cast aside the subtle insinuation of falsehood which in a time of indecision and perplexity arises within him, and he must stand firmly by the principle, being willing to lose and suffer rather than sink into obliquity. In this way only can he become enlightened concerning this moral principle, and discover the glad truth that integrity does not lead to loss and suffering, but to gain and joy, that honesty and deprivation are not and cannot be related as cause and effect. It is this willingness to sacrifice, rather than be untrue, that leads to enlightenment in all spheres of life, and the man who, rather than sacrifice some selfish aim, will lie or deceive, has forfeited his right to moral enlightenment, and takes his place lower down among the devotees of deceit, among the doers of shady transactions, than men of no character and no reputation. A man is not truly armored with integrity until he has become incapable of lying or deceiving either by gesture, word, or act, until he sees clearly, openly, and freed from all doubt the deadly effects of such moral turpitude. The man so enlightened is protected from all quarters, and he can no more be undermined by dishonest men than the sun can be pulled down from the heaven by madmen, and the arrows of selfishness and treachery that may be poured upon him will rebound from the strong armor of his integrity and the bright shield of his righteousness, leaving him unharmed and untouched. A lying tradesman will tell you that no man can thrive and be honest in these days of keen competition. How can such a man know this, seeing that he has never tried honesty? Moreover, such a man has no knowledge of honesty, and his statement is therefore a statement of ignorance, and ignorance and falsehood so blind a man that he foolishly imagines all are as ignorant and false as himself. I have known such tradesmen, and I have seen them come to ruin. I once heard a business man make the following statement in a public meeting: "No man can be entirely honest in business. He can only be approximately honest." He imagined that his statement revealed the condition of the business world. It did not. It revealed his own condition. He was merely telling his audience that he was a dishonest man, but his ignorance, moral ignorance, prevented him from seeing this. Approximate honesty is only another term for dishonesty. The man who deviated a little from the straight path will deviate more. He has no fixed principle of right, and is only thinking of his own advantage. That he persuades himself that his particular dishonesty is of a white and harmless kind, and that he is not so bad as his neighbor, is only one of the many forms of self-delusion which ignorance of moral principle creates. Right doing between men, in the varied relations and transactions of life, is the very soul of integrity. It includes, but is more than, honesty. It is the backbone of human society, and the support of human institutions. Without it there would be no trust, no confidence between men, and the business world would topple to its fall. As the liar thinks all men are liars, and treats them as such, so the man of integrity treats all men with confidence. He trusts them, and they trust him. His clear eye and open hand shame the creeping fraud, so that he cannot practice his fraud on him. As Emerson has so finely put it, trust men and they will be true to you, even though they may make an exception in your favor to all their rules of trade. The upright man by his very presence commands the morality of those about him, making them better than they were. Men are powerfully influenced by one another, and as good is more powerful than evil, the strong and good man both shames and elevates, by his contact, the weak and bad. The man of integrity carries about with him an unconscious grandeur which both awes and inspires. Having lifted himself above the petty, the mean, and the false, those coward vices slink from his presence in confusion. The highest intellectual gift cannot compare with this lofty moral grandeur. In the memory of men and the estimation of the world, the man of integrity occupies a higher place than the man of genius. Buckminster says, "The moral grandeur of an independent integrity is the sublimest thing in nature." It is the quality in man which produces heroes. The man of unswerving rectitude is, intrinsically, always a hero. It only needs the occasion to bring about the heroic element. He is always, too, possessed by a permanent happiness. The man of genius may be very unhappy, but not to the man of integrity. Nothing, nor sickness, nor calamity, nor death, can deprive him of that permanent satisfaction which inheres in uprightness. Rectitude leads straight to prosperity by 4 successive steps. First, the upright man wins the confidence of others. Second, having gained their confidence, they put trust in him. Third, this trust, never being violated, produces a good reputation, and fourth, a good reputation spreads further and further, and so brings about success. Dishonesty has the reverse effect. By destroying the confidence of others, it produces in them suspicion and mistrust, and these bring about a bad reputation, which culminates in failure. The pillars of integrity are held together by these four virile elements: 1. Honesty. 2. Fearlessness. 3. Purposefulness. 4. Invincibility. Honesty is the surest way to success. The day at last comes when the dishonest man repents in sorrow and suffering, but no man ever needs to repent of having been honest. Even when the honest man fails, as he does sometimes, through the lacking of other of these pillars, such as energy, economy, or system, his failure is not the grievous thing it is to the dishonest man, for he can always rejoice in the fact that he has never defrauded a fellow being. Even in his darkest hour he finds repose in a clear conscience. Ignorant men imagine that dishonesty is a short cut to prosperity. That is why they practice it. The dishonest man is morally short-sighted, like the drunkard who sees the immediate pleasure of his habit but not the ultimate degradation. He sees the immediate effect of a dishonest act, a larger profit, but not its ultimate outcome. He does not see that an accumulated number of such acts must inevitably undermine his character, and bring his business toppling upon its ears in ruin. While pocketing his gains, and thinking how cleverly and successfully he is imposing on others, he is all the time imposing on himself, and thus every coin gained must be paid back with added interest, and from this just retribution there is no possible loophole of escape. This moral gravitation is as sure and unvarying as the physical gravitation of a stone to the earth. The tradesman who demands of his assistants that they shall be, and misrepresents his goods to customers, is surrounding himself on all hands with suspicion, mistrust, and hatred. Even the moral weaklings, who carry out his instructions, despise him, while defiling themselves with his unclean work. How can success thrive in such a poisonous atmosphere? The spirit of ruin is already in such a business, and the day of his fall is ordained. An honest man may fail, but not because he is honest, and his failure will be honorable, and will not injure his character and reputation. His failure, too, resulting doubtless from his incapacity in the particular direction of his failure, will be a means of leading him into something more suited to his talents, and thus to ultimate success. Fearlessness accompanies honesty. The honest man has a clear eye and an unflinching gaze. He looks his fellowmen in the face, and his speech is direct and convincing. The liar and cheat hangs his head. His eye is muddy and his gaze oblique. He cannot look another man in the eye, and his speech arouses mistrust, for it is ambiguous and unconvincing. When a man has fulfilled his obligations he has nothing to fear. All his business relations are safe and secure. His methods and actions will endure the light of day. Should he pass through a difficult time and get into debt, everybody will trust him and be willing to wait for payment, and all his debts will be paid. Dishonest people try to avoid paying their debts, and they live in fear, but the honest man tries to avoid getting into debt. But when debt overtakes him, he does not fear, but redoubling his exertions, his debts are paid. The dishonest are always in fear. They do not fear debt, but fear that they will have to pay their debt. They fear their fellow men, fear the established authorities, fear the results of all that they do, and they are in constant fear of their misdeeds being revealed, and the consequences which may at any moment overtake them. The honest man is rid of all this burden of fear. He is light-hearted, and walks erect among his fellows, not assuming a part, and sulking and cringing, but being himself, and meeting eye to eye, not deceiving or injuring any. There are none to fear, and anything and against him can only rebound to his advantage. And this fearlessness is, in itself, a tower to strength in a man's life, supporting him through all emergencies, enabling him to battle manfully with difficulties, and in the end securing for him that success of which he cannot be dispossessed. Purposefulness is the direct outcome of that strength of character which integrity fosters. The man of integrity is the man of direct aims and strong and intelligent purposes. He does not guess and work in the dark. All his plans have in them some of that moral fiber of which his character is wrought. A man's work will always come in some way to reflect himself, and the man of sound integrity is the man of sound plan. He weighs and considers and looks ahead, and so is less likely to make serious mistakes, or to bungle into a dilemma from which it is difficult to escape. Taking a moral view of all things, and always considering moral consequences, he stands on a firmer and more exalted ground than the man of mere policy and expedience, and while commanding a more extended view of any situation, he wields the greater power which a more comprehensive grasp of details with the principles involved confers upon him. Morality always has the advantage of expediency. Its purposes always reach down far below the surface, and are therefore more firm and secure, more strong and lasting. There is a native directness, too, about integrity, which enables the man to get straight to the mark in whatever he does, and which makes failure almost impossible. Strong men have strong purposes, and strong purposes lead to strong achievements. The man of integrity is above all men strong, and his strength is manifested in that thoroughness with which he does the business of his life, thoroughness which commands respect, admiration, and success. Invincibility is a glorious protector, but it only envelops the man whose integrity is perfectly pure and unassailable. Never to violate, even in the most insignificant particular, the principle of integrity, is to be invincible against all the assaults of innuendo, slander, and misrepresentation. The man who has failed in one point is vulnerable, and the shaft of evil, entering that point, will lay him low, like the arrow in the heel of Achilles. Pure and perfect integrity is proof against all attack and injury, enabling its possessor to meet all opposition and persecution with dauntless courage and sublime equanimity. No amount of talent, intellect, or business acumen can give a man that power of mind and peace of heart which come from an enlightened acceptance and observance of lofty moral principles. Moral force is the greatest power. Let the seeker for true prosperity discover this force. Let him foster and develop it in his mind and in his deeds, and as he succeeds, he will take his place among the strong leaders of the earth. Such is the strong and adamantine pillar of integrity. Blessed and prosperous above all men will be he who builds its incorruptible masonry into the temple of his life. End of Chapter 4. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 5 of 8 Pillars of Prosperity by James Allen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 5. Fourth Pillar. System. System is that principle of order by which confusion is rendered impossible. In the natural and universal order everything is in its place, so that the vast universe runs more perfectly than the most perfect machine. Disorder in space would mean the destruction of the universe, and disorder in a man's affairs destroys his work and his prosperity. All complex organizations are built up by system. No business or society can develop into large dimensions apart from system, and this system is preeminently the instrument of the merchant, the businessman, and the organizer of institutions. There are many departments in which a disorderly man may succeed. Although attention to order would increase his success, he will not succeed in business unless he can place the business
entirely in the hands of a systematic manager, who will thereby remedy his own defect. All large business concerns have been evolved along definitely drawn systematic lines, any violation of which would be disastrous to the efficiency and welfare of the business. Complex business or other organizations are built up like complex bodies in nature by scrupulous attention to details. The disorderly man thinks he can be careless about everything but the main end, but by ignoring the means he frustrates the end. By the disarrangement of details, organisms perish, and by the careless neglect of details, the growth of any work or concern is prevented. Disorderly people waste an enormous amount of time and energy. The time frittered away in hunting for things is sufficient, were if it conserved by order, to enable them to achieve any success, for slovenly people never have a place for anything, and have to hunt, frequently for a long time, for any article that they require. In the irritation, bad humor, and chagrin which this daily hunting for things brings about, as much energy is dissipated as would be required to build up a big business, or scale the highest heights of achievement in any direction. Orderly people conserve both their time and energy. They never lose anything, and therefore never have to find anything. Everything is in its place, and the hand can be at once placed upon it, though it may be in the dark. They can well afford to be cool and deliberate, and so use their mental energies in something more profitable than irritation, bad temper, and accusing others for their own lack of order. There is a kind of genius in system which can perform apparent wonders with ease. A systematic man can get through so great a quantity of work in such a short time and with such freedom from such exhaustion as to appear almost miraculous. He scales the heights of success, while his slovenly competitor is wallowing hopelessly in the bogs of confusion. His strict observance to the law of order enables him to reach his ends, swiftly and smoothly, without friction or loss of time. The demands of system, in all departments of the business world, are as rigid and exacting as the holy vows of a saint, and cannot be violated in the smallest particular, but at the risk of one's financial prospects. In the financial world, the law of order is an iron necessity, and he who faultlessly observes it saves time, temper, and money. Every enduring achievement in human society rests upon a basis of system. So true is this, that were system withdrawn, progress would cease. Think, for instance, of the vast achievements of literature, the works of classic authors and of great geniuses, the great poems, the innumerable prose works, the monumental histories. Think also the social intercourse of human society, of its religions, its legal statutes, and its vast fund of book knowledge. Think of all these wonderful resources and achievements of language, and then reflect that they all depend for their origin, growth, and continuance on the systematic arrangements of 26 letters, an arrangement having inexhaustible and illimitable results by the fact of its rigid limitation within certain fixed rules. Again, all the wonderful achievements of mathematics have come from the systematic arrangement of 10 figures, while the most complex piece of machinery, with its thousands of parts, working together smoothly and almost noiselessly to the achievement of the end for which it was designed, was brought forth by the systematic observance of a few mechanical laws. Herein we see how system simplifies that which is complex, how it makes easy that which was difficult, how it relates an infinite variety of details of the one central law or order, and so enables them to be dealt with and accounted for with perfect regularity and with an entire absence of confusion. The scientist names and classifies the myriad details of the universe, from the microscopic rotifer to the telescopic star, by his observance of the principles of system, so that out of many millions of objects, reference can be made to any object in, at most, a few minutes. It is this faculty of speedy references and swift dispatch which is of such overwhelming importance in every department of knowledge and industry, and the amount of time and labor thus saved to humanity is so vast as to be incomprehensible. We speak of religious, political, and business systems, and so on, indicating all things in human society are welded together by the adhesive qualities of order. System is, indeed, one of the great fundamental principles in progress, and in the binding together, in one complete whole, of the world's millions of human beings, while they are at the same time each striving for a place, and are competing with one another in opposing aims and interest. We see here how system is allied with greatness, for the many separate units whose minds are untrained to the discipline of system are kept in their places by the organizing power of the comparatively few who perceive the urgent and inescapable necessity for the establishment of fixed and inviolable rules, whether in business, law, religion, science, or politics, in fact, in every sphere of human activity, for immediately when two human beings meet together, they need some common ground of understanding for the avoidance of confusion, in a word, some system to regulate their actions. Life is too short for confusion, and knowledge grows and progress proceeds along avenues of system which prevent retardation and retrogression, so that he who systematizes his knowledge or business simplifies and enhances it for his successor, enabling him to begin, with a free mind, where he left off. Every large business has its system, which renders its vast machinery workable, enabling it to run like a well-balanced and well-oiled machine. A remarkable business man, a friend of mine, once told me that he could leave his huge business for 12 months and it would run on without a hitch till his return, and he does occasionally leave it for several months while traveling, and on his return every man, boy and girl, every tool, book and machine, every detail down to the smallest, is in its place doing its work as when he left, and no trouble, no difficulty, no confusion has arisen. There can be no marked success part of a love of regularity and discipline, and the avoidance of friction, along with the restfulness and the efficiency of mind which spring from such regularity. People who abhor discipline, whose minds are ungoverned and anarchic, and who are careless and irregular in their thinking, their habits, and the management of their affairs, cannot be highly successful and prosperous, and they fill their lives with numerous worries, troubles, difficulties, and petty annoyances, all of which would disappear under a proper regulation of their lives. An unsystematic mind is an untrained mind, and it can no more cope with well-disciplined minds in the race of life than an untrained athlete can successfully compete with a carefully trained competitor in athletic races. The ill-disciplined mind, who thinks anything will do, rapidly falls behind the well-disciplined minds, who are convinced that only the best will do, in the strenuous race for the prizes of life, whether they be material, mental, or moral prizes. The man who, when he comes to do his work, is unable to find his tools, or balance his figures, or to find the key of his desk, or the key to his thoughts, will be struggling in his self-made toils, while his methodical neighbor will be freely and joyfully scaling the invigorating heights of successful achievement. The business man whose method is slovenly, or cumbersome, or behind the most recent developments of skilled minds, should only blame himself as his prospects are decadent, and should wake up to the necessity for more highly specialized and effective methods in his concern. He should seize upon everything, every invention and idea that will enable him to economize time and labor, and aid him in thoroughness, deliberation, and dispatch. System is the law by which everything, every organism, business, character, nation, empire, is built. By adding cell to cell, department to department, thought to thought, law to law, and colony to colony, in orderly sequence and classification, all things, concerns, and institutions grow in magnitude,
and evolve to completeness. The man who is continually improving his methods is gaining in building power. It therefore behooves the business man to be resourceful and inventive in the improvement of his methods, for the builders, whether of cathedrals or characters, business or religions, are the strong ones of the earth, the protectors and pioneers of humanity. The systematic builder is a creator and preserver, while the man of disorder demolishes and destroys, and no limit can be set to the growth of a man's powers, the completeness of his character, the influence of his organization, or the extent of his business, if he but preserve intact the discipline of order, and have every detail in its place, keep every department to its special task, and tabulate and classify with such efficiency and perfection as to enable him at any moment to bring under examination or into requisition to the remotest detail in connection with his special work. In system is contained these 4 ingredients: 1. Readiness. 2. Accuracy. 3. Utility. 4. Comprehensiveness. Readiness is aliveness. It is that spirit of alertness by which a situation is immediately grasped and dealt with. The observance of system fosters and develops this spirit. The successful general must have the power of readily meeting any new and unlooked for move on the part of the enemy. So every business man must have the readiness to deal with any unexpected development affecting his line of trade. And so also must the man of thought be able to deal with the details of any new problems which may arise. Dilatoriness is a vice that is fatal to prosperity, for it leads to incompatibility and stupidity. The men of ready hands, ready hearts, and ready brains, who know what they are doing, do it methodically, skillfully, and with smooth yet consummate dispatch, are the men who need to think little of prosperity as an end, for it comes to them whether they seek it or not. Success runs after them and knocks at their door, and they unconsciously command it by the superb excellence of their faculties and methods. Accuracy is of supreme importance in all commercial concerns and enterprises, but there can be no accuracy apart from system, and a system which is more or less imperfect will involve its originator in mistakes more or less disastrous until he improves it. Inaccuracy is one of the commonest failings, because accuracy is closely allied to self-discipline, and self-discipline, along with that glad subjection to external discipline which it involves, is an indication of high moral culture to which the majority have not yet attained. If the inaccurate man will not willingly subject himself to the discipline of his employer or instructor, but thinks he knows better, his failing can never be remedied, and he will thereby bind himself down to an inferior position if in the business world, or to imperfect knowledge if in the world of thought. The prevalence of the vice of inaccuracy, and in view of its disastrous effect it must be regarded as a vice, though perhaps one of the lesser vices, is patent to every observer in the way in which the majority of people relate a circumstance or repeat a simple statement of fact. It is nearly always made untrue by more or less marked inaccuracies. Few people, perhaps, not reckoning those who deliberately lie, have trained themselves to be accurate in what they say, or are so careful as to admit and state their liability to error. And from this common form of inaccuracy many untruths and misunderstandings arise. More people take pains to be accurate in what they do than in what they say, but even here inaccuracy is very common, rendering many inefficient and incompetent, and unfitting them for any strenuous and well-sustained endeavor. The man who habitually uses up a portion of his own or his employer's time in trying to correct his errors, or for the correction of those mistakes another has to be employed, is not the man to maintain any position in the workaday world, much less to reach a place among the ranks of the prosperous. There never yet lived a man who did not make some mistakes on his way to his particular success, but he is the capable and right-minded man who perceives his mistakes and quickly remedies them, and who is glad when they are pointed out to him. It is habitual and persistent, inaccuracy which is a vice, and he is the incapable and wrong-minded man who will not see or admit his mistakes, and who takes offense when they are pointed out to him. The progressive man learns by his own mistakes, as well as by the mistakes of others. He is always ready to test good advice by practice, and aims at greater and ever greater accuracy in his methods, which means higher and higher perfection, for accuracy is perfect, and the measure of a man's accuracy will be the measure of his uniqueness and perfection. Utility, or usefulness, is the direct result of method in one's work. Labor arrives at fruitful and profitable ends when it is systematically pursued. If the gardener is to gather in the best produce, he must not only sow and plant, but he must sow and plant at the right time, and if any work is to be fruitful in results, it must be done seasonably, and the time for doing a thing must not be allowed to pass by. Utility considers the practical end, and employs the best means to reach that end. It avoids side issues, dispenses with theories, and retains its hold only on those things which can be appropriated to good use in the economy of life. Unpractical people burden their minds with useless and unverifiable theories, and court failure by entertaining speculations which, by their very nature, cannot be applied in practice. The man whose powers are shown in what he does, and not in mere talking or arguing, avoids metaphysical quibbling and quandaries, and applies himself to the accomplishment of some good and useful end. That which cannot be reduced to practice should not be allowed to hamper the mind. It should be thrown aside, abandoned, and ignored. A man recently told me that if his theory should be proved to have no useful end, he should still retain his hold upon it as a beautiful theory. If a man chooses to cling to so-called beautiful theories, which are proved to have no use in life, and no substantial basis of reality, he must not be surprised if he fails in his worldly undertakings, for he is an unpractical man. When the powers of mind are diverted from speculative theorizing to practical doing, whether in material or moral directions, skill, power, knowledge, and prosperity increase. A man's prosperity is measured by his usefulness to the community, and a man is useful in accordance with what he does, and not because of the theories which he entertains. The carpenter fashions a chair, the builder erects a house, the mechanic produces a machine, and the wise man molds a perfect character. Not the schismatic, the theorists, and the controversialists, but the workers, the makers, and the doers are the salt of the earth. Let a man turn away from the mirage of intellectual speculation, and begin to do something, and to do it with all his might, and he will thereby gain a special knowledge, wield a special power, and reach his own unique position and prosperity among his fellows. Comprehensiveness is that quality of mind which enables a man to deal with a large number of related details, to grasp them in their entirety, along with the single principle which governs them and binds them together. It is a masterly quality, giving organizing and governing power, and is developed by systematic attention to details. The successful merchant holds in his mind, as it were, all the details of his business, and regulates them by a system adapted to his particular form of trade. The inventor has in his mind all the details of his machine, along with their relation to a central mechanical principle, and so perfects his invention. The author of a great poem or story relates all his characters and incidents to a central plot, and so produces a composite and enduring literary work. Comprehensiveness is analytic and synthetic capacity combined in the same individual. A capacious and well-ordered mind holds within its silent depths an army of details in their proper arrangement and true working order is the mind that is near to genius, even if it has not already arrived. A man cannot be a genius, nor does he need to be, but he can be gradually evolving his mental capacity by careful attention to system in his thoughts and business, and as his intellect depends and broadens his powers, will be intensified and his prosperity accentuated. Such, then, are the four corner pillars in the Temple of Prosperity, and of themselves they are sufficient to permanently sustain it without the addition of the remaining four. The man who perfects himself in energy, economy, integrity, and system will achieve an enduring success in the work of his life, no matter what the nature of that work may be. It is impossible for one to fail who is full of energy, who carefully economizes his time and money, and virtuously husbands his vitality, who practices unswerving integrity, and who systematizes his work by first systematizing his mind. Such a man's efforts will be rightly directed, and that, too, with concentrated power, so that they will be effective and fruitful. In addition, he will reach a manliness and an independent dignity which will unconsciously command respect and success, and will strengthen weaker ones by its very presence in their midst. Seest thou a man diligent in business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men, says Scripture of such a one. He will not beg or whimper or complain or cynically blame others, but will be too strong and pure and upright a man to sink himself so low. And so, standing high in the nobility and integrity of his character, he will fill a high place in the world in the estimation of men. His success will be certain, and his prosperity will endure. He will stand and not fall in the battle of life. End of chapter 5. Recording by Andrea Fiore.